The yellow silk of my borrowed dress felt like armor, but my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Do it, Ella, or you forfeit the cash," Jessica sneered, swirling her expensive wine like she was tasting my humiliation. I looked across the room, under the crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than my entire college tuition. He was there, the man they dared me to kiss. The dark ink crawling up his neck and throat stood in stark, violent contrast to the pristine white collar of his shirt. He looked like a predator in a room full of prey, and everyone else seemed to know it. The space around him was a bubble of fear. No one stood too close. No one even looked at him for too long. I needed that money. $500, enough for rent, and maybe groceries for 2 weeks. I needed to prove I wasn't just the charity case that Jessica and her friends pitied. So I downed the rest of my champagne, letting the liquid courage burn away my common sense. I didn't know his name was Adonis Chavarria. I didn't know he ran the most powerful cartel in the city. I just knew he was the most dangerous thing I'd ever seen, and I was about to walk right into the fire. Welcome back to the channel, story lovers. Before we see if Ella survives this kiss, drop a comment down below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And hey, if you're new here, hit that like button and subscribe to join the family. My heels clicked against the marble floor, each step an echo that felt like a countdown to my own execution. The crowd parted without me having to ask. It wasn't for me, they were just maintaining their distance from him, from the man I was walking toward like a lamb to slaughter. Jessica and her friends watched from the bar, their designer dresses shimmering, their cruel smiles gleaming brighter than the chandeliers above us. They thought this was entertainment. They thought I'd chicken out halfway across the ballroom and come crawling back, humiliated and broke. But I was so tired of being poor, tired of working double shifts at that coffee shop where they ordered their $12 lattes and never tipped, tired of being the scholarship student they kept around like a pet project, tired of being small. $500. That's what this was worth to them, a joke, a game, pocket change. To me, it was survival. I forced myself to focus on the details as I got closer. Anything to stop my hands from shaking. The tattoos weren't random prison ink or drunken mistakes. They were intricate, deliberate, beautiful, in a way that violence could be beautiful. Roses with thorns sharp enough to draw blood. A serpent coiled around his throat, its fangs bared right below his jawline. The ink disappeared beneath his collar, and I found myself wondering how far down it went, how much of him was marked by darkness. His suit was tailored perfectly, the kind of fit you couldn't get off a rack. The fabric moved with him like it was part of his skin. And that watch, God, that watch. The face caught the light as he lifted his glass. It was platinum, maybe white gold, with a face so clean and expensive it could have paid off my student loans twice over. 10 feet away now, I could smell him. Expensive cologne, cedar and bergamot, and something darker underneath. Something that didn't come in a bottle. Danger had a scent, I realized. It was leather and gunpowder and the metallic tang of power. He turned his head slightly, those dark eyes sliding toward me with the laziness of a predator who already knew he'd won. He'd known I was coming since the moment I stood up from Jessica's table. He'd probably known before I did. The space around him was a void. Men in expensive suits kept their distance. Women in diamond necklaces found reasons to look elsewhere. But he looked at me. Only me. I stopped right in front of him, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. He was taller than I expected, broader, and up close the ink on his throat seemed alive, the serpent ready to strike. "I'm so sorry about this," I whispered, my voice barely carrying over the music. His eyebrow lifted a fraction, the corner of his mouth curving into something that wasn't quite a smile. "About what?" I didn't answer. I didn't trust my voice. Instead, I reached up, my hand finding the back of his neck where the tattoos gave way to warm skin, and I pulled him down to me. The kiss was supposed to be quick, a peck, a brush of lips to win the bet and get me the hell out of there. But the moment our mouths touched, something ignited. He tasted like whiskey and smoke and sin, and when his hand came up to cup my jaw, his thumb pressing against my racing pulse, I forgot how to breathe. The party disappeared. The crowd, Jessica, the bet, the money, all of it dissolved into nothing. His other hand found my waist, pulling me closer, and suddenly I wasn't in control anymore. I'd started this, but he was finishing it. His lips moved against mine with a confidence that made my knees weak, a deliberate claiming that had nothing to do with my dare and everything to do with something darker. I could feel the eyes on us. The entire ballroom had gone quiet, or maybe that was just the blood rushing in my ears. His fingers pressed into the silk of my dress, and I swore I could feel the heat of his palms through the fabric, burning brands into my skin. When he deepened the kiss, I made a sound I'd never made before, desperate and needy and completely unbidden. His grip tightened in response, possessive and unyielding. This wasn't a kiss, this was a conquest. I broke away first, gasping, my lips swollen and my heart trying to hammer its way out of my chest. I stumbled back a half step, my heels unsteady on the marble. His hand was still on my waist. He hadn't let go. I'm sorry, The words tumbled out in a rush, panic flooding my system now that the champagne courage had burned away. It was a dare. I didn't mean to. I should go. I tried to turn, tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. He leaned down, his lips brushing my ear, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through my entire body. "You're mine now." 3 words. That's all it took for my world to tilt sideways. "What?" I breathed. "You heard me." He pulled back just enough to look at me, and those dark eyes held something that made my stomach drop. Not anger, worse, certainty. "You don't kiss a man like me and walk away, Princessa. That's not how this works." The air left the room. The chandeliers suddenly felt too bright, the walls too close. Behind me, I could hear Jessica's nervous laughter die in her throat. "I don't understand." "You will." His thumb traced my bottom lip, still swollen from his kiss, and the gesture was so intimate, so possessive, that I felt it like a brand. "Go collect your money from your friends, then come back to me." Adonis didn't hesitate, and neither should you. If you can't stand fake friends who pressure you into doing things you don't want to do, hit that subscribe button. Only the manipulators and fake friends will skip this. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command wrapped in velvet, and somehow that made it more terrifying. I tried to step back again, but his hand on my waist didn't budge. The tattooed fingers spread wider, covering more of the yellow silk, and I could feel the heat of each individual fingertip burning through the fabric. His palm was massive, possessive, and the serpent inked across his knuckles seemed to be staring at me with the same predatory focus as the man himself. "I need to go," I said, hating how my voice shook. It was stupid. I shouldn't have, but you did." His voice was low, dangerous, the kind of quiet that made you lean in even when every instinct screamed to run. "You walked across this room, in front of everyone here, and you put your hands on me. You kissed me." His thumb traced lazy circles on my waist, a gentle touch that somehow felt like a threat. "Did you think there wouldn't be consequences?" My breath caught in my throat. "It was a dare, just a stupid dare for money." "I don't care about the dare." He pulled me closer, until my body was pressed against his and I could feel the solid wall of muscle beneath that expensive suit. "I care that you're mine now." The words hit me like a physical blow. Around us, the party had gone from quietly watching to completely silent. Even the string quartet in the corner had stopped playing. Every eye in the ballroom was on us, and the weight of their stares made my skin crawl. "You don't even know me," I whispered, searching his face for some sign that this was a joke, that he'd laugh and let me go and I could run back to my tiny apartment and pretend this never happened. But his expression didn't change. Those dark eyes held no humor, no mercy, just absolute certainty. "I know enough." His free hand came up to cup my face, forcing me to maintain eye contact. "I know you're desperate enough to kiss a stranger for money. I know your friends are garbage who treat you like entertainment. I know that dress doesn't belong to you, and neither do those shoes." His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, surprisingly gentle. "I know you're drowning, Princessa, and I know you need someone to pull you out." The accuracy of his assessment stole the air from my lungs. How could he see all of that? How could a 30-second kiss tell him everything I'd been trying to hide for months? "Let me go," I said, but it came out weak, unconvincing even to my own ears. "No." The word was final, absolute. "You came to me. You made your choice when you crossed that floor. Now you live with it." Panic clawed up my throat. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. I was supposed to kiss him, get the money, and disappear into the crowd. I wasn't supposed to be trapped in the arms of a man who looked at me like I was something he owned. "Please." I tried again, my hands coming up to push against his chest. It was like pushing against a brick wall. "I don't understand what you want from me. Everything." The word was a promise and a threat rolled into one. "Your time, your attention, your presence in my life." His hand slid from my waist to the small of my back, holding me against him. "You don't go back to that coffee shop. You don't go back to those friends. You don't go back to struggling to pay rent and eating ramen for dinner. My eyes widened. How do you... I know everything about this room, Ella. He knew my name. Oh God, he knew my name, and I'd never told him. The realization sent ice water through my veins. I know who's here to launder money, who's here to make deals, and who's here because they're desperately trying to fit into a world that doesn't want them. His lips curved into something that might have been a smile on a different man, but on him it looked predatory. You're the only real thing here. The only person not pretending to be something they're not. You're insane, I breathed. You can't just claim someone because they kissed you. I can. His voice dropped even lower, and I felt it in my bones. I do. And no one in this room is going to stop me. I looked around desperately, searching for help, for someone to intervene. But every face I saw quickly looked away. They were afraid of him, terrified. And now I understood why. Who are you? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer would change everything. Adonis Chavarria. He said it like it should mean something, like it was a name that carried weight, and from the way the remaining color drained from my face, he knew that it did. I'd heard that name before, whispered in corners of the coffee shop by businessmen who thought the barista wasn't listening, mentioned in news reports about gang violence and cartel activity that the police couldn't stop. Adonis Chavarria wasn't just dangerous, he was the most dangerous man in the city, and I'd just kissed him on a dare. Oh God, I whispered. Not quite. His hand tightened on my back, but close enough for your purposes. He leaned down, his lips brushing my ear again, and I shivered despite myself. Here's what's going to happen, Ella. You're going to walk over to your friends. You're going to collect your money, and then you're going to come back to me and get in my car. We're going to have a conversation about your future. And if I run? The question was stupid, reckless, but I needed to know. His chuckle was dark, devoid of humor. Then I'll find you. And Princessa, you really don't want me to have to hunt you down. I'm much more pleasant when I get what I want without resistance. The threat hung in the air between us, heavy and undeniable. This is kidnapping, I said, hating how weak I sounded. This is salvation. He released me finally, but his eyes never left mine. 5 minutes, Ella. Get your money. Say goodbye to your old life. Then come back to me like a good girl. I stumbled backward, nearly falling in my borrowed heels. My lips still burned from his kiss. My waist still felt the ghost of his hand. And every survival instinct I had screamed at me to run, to get as far away from Adonis Chavarria as humanly possible. But as I turned toward Jessica's table, where $500 and my so-called friends waited, I knew with horrible certainty that running wouldn't save me. Nothing would. Because when a predator like him decided you were his, the hunt was already over. Adonis knows what he wants and takes it. If you believe in going after what you want and not letting anyone stop you, smash that like button. Only the lazy and the cowards will scroll past. My legs felt like they were made of water as I walked toward Jessica's table. Each step was a negotiation with gravity, my borrowed heels clicking against marble that suddenly felt like it might crack open and swallow me whole. Jessica and her friends were huddled together like conspirators, their perfectly made-up faces a mixture of shock and something that looked disturbingly like fear. When I reached them, Jessica's hand shook as she held out the folded bills. Here, she said quickly. Too quickly. You did it. You actually did it. I took the money with numb fingers. $500. It felt obscene now, like blood money. Like I'd sold something I could never get back for a handful of 20s and 100s. Who is he? I asked, though I already knew. I just needed to hear someone else say it, needed confirmation that I hadn't imagined the weight of his name. You don't know? Jessica's friend Madison whispered, her eyes wide. Ella, that's Adonis Chavarria. The name landed like a bomb. Around the table, the other girls physically recoiled, as if just saying it out loud might summon something terrible. He runs the Chavarria cartel, Jessica continued, her voice barely audible. He's God, Ella. He's killed people. Lots of people. His family controls half the city's underground. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking. Stop. I cut her off, my stomach churning. Just stop. We didn't know he'd be here, Madison added, like that absolved them of guilt. We thought it was just some rich guy. We didn't think. You never think. I snapped, surprising myself with the venom in my voice. You never think about anyone but yourselves. Jessica's face hardened, her fear temporarily replaced by the casual cruelty I'd come to know so well. Don't act like you're better than us now just because some cartel boss decided you're his new toy. Girls like you don't last long in his world, Ella. We're doing you a favor by—" She never finished the sentence. Adonis appeared behind me so silently that I didn't know he was there until his hand settled on my lower back, warm and possessive. The touch sent electricity shooting up my spine. The effect on Jessica and her friends was immediate and visceral. Madison actually gasped. Another girl, Brittany, knocked over her wine glass, red liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. But it was Jessica who bore the full weight of Adonis's attention. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at her. It wasn't a glare, wasn't even particularly aggressive. It was simply a look the way a lion might observe a gazelle right before deciding whether it was hungry. Jessica's face went from red to white in seconds. Her hand started to tremble, and she gripped the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "These are your friends?" Adonis asked me, his voice conversational, almost pleasant. But there was something underneath it, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "They were," I heard myself say. His thumb traced small circles on my back, the gesture intimate and claiming in a way that made me hyper-aware of every eye in the room. "The ones who dared you to kiss me for $500? Jessica made a small sound, something between a whimper and a denial. "Answer me," Adonis said, and this time there was nothing conversational about his tone. It was a command, backed by the kind of authority that came from years of people obeying or dying. "Yes," Jessica stammered. "But it was just a joke. You didn't mean for her to have to humiliate herself for pocket change?" Adonis's hand left my back, and I felt the loss of heat immediately. He stepped forward, placing both palms flat on the table, leaning toward Jessica with predatory focus. "You didn't mean for her to risk her safety approaching a stranger because you were bored and cruel?" "We're sorry," Madison tried, her voice cracking. "We didn't know. You know what I do to people who disrespect what's mine." Adonis interrupted, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet again. The table collectively held its breath. "I make examples of them." He straightened, his hand finding my waist again, pulling me against his side. "But Ella seems to have a kind heart, kinder than you deserve. So I'm going to give you all a gift." Jessica's eyes were glassy with unshed tears. "What gift?" "You get to walk away from this." His smile was terrifying in its coldness. "You get to go back to your expensive apartments and your trust funds and your shallow little lives. But if I ever see any of you near her again, if I hear you've spoken her name, if I even suspect you're thinking about her—" He paused, letting the threat breathe. "Well, let's just say you won't get a second chance." "We understand," Jessica said quickly. "We won't. We'll leave her alone. I swear." "Good." Adonis turned his attention to me, his expression softening infinitesimally. "Are we done here, Princessa?" I looked at the women I'd called friends for the past 2 years, women who'd let me pick up their tabs, who'd borrowed my notes and never returned them, who'd made me feel small and grateful just to be included in their circle. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady for the first time all night. "We're done." Adonis's hand slid from my waist to my hand, his tattooed fingers interlacing with mine. The gesture should have felt romantic, but it felt like a shackle clicking into place. He began walking, and I had no choice but to follow, my body moving on autopilot. "Wait," I said as we passed the coat check. "I need to get my things, already taken care of." He didn't break stride, didn't even look at me. "My men collected your coat and bag." "Your men?" The words came out strangled. How many people did he have here? How long had he been watching me? We passed through the main ballroom, and I watched guests part like the Red Sea. Some looked away quickly. Others stared with a mixture of fascination and pity. I caught a glimpse of my reflection in one of the massive gilded mirrors, a girl in a yellow dress being led away by a tattooed king, and she looked terrified. She looked captured. "Where are we going?" I asked as we approached the main entrance. "Somewhere we can talk." Adonis pushed open the heavy doors, and cool night air hit my overheated skin. "Somewhere private." A black SUV waited at the curb, idling like a predator. The windows were tinted so dark they looked like voids. A man in a black suit stood by the rear door, and he opened it the moment he saw us approaching. "I don't want to go with you," I said, even though I knew it was pointless. Adonis stopped, turning to face me fully. His free hand came up to cup my jaw, tilting my face up to his. "Yes, you do. You're just scared." "But Ella," his thumb brushed across my lower lip, the same lip he'd claimed with his kiss earlier. "You've been scared your whole life. Scared of being poor. Scared of being alone. Scared of never being enough. His accuracy was a blade between my ribs. I'm offering you a different kind of fear, he continued, his dark eyes boring into mine. The fear of being seen. Of being claimed. Of being worshipped by a monster. His lips curved into something that might have been a smile. It's terrifying. But Princessa, isn't it better than being invisible? I hated that he was right. Hated that some broken part of me was already leaning into his touch, already wondering what it would feel like to be wanted this desperately. Get in the car, Ella, he said softly. Your old life is over. Let's go start your new one. And God help me, I did. The interior of the SUV was like stepping into another world. Leather seats so soft they felt like butter, the smell of expensive materials and cedar cologne filling the space. The door closed behind me with a heavy thunk that sounded final, like a vault ceiling. Adonis slid in beside me, close enough that his thigh pressed against mine. The man who'd opened the door got into the driver's seat, and another man I hadn't noticed materialized in the passenger seat. Both wore black suits and earpieces. Both had the kind of build that suggested violence was their first language. Drive, Adonis said simply, and the SUV pulled smoothly away from the curb. I watched through the tinted windows as the glittering venue disappeared behind us, taking with it the last remnants of my old life. My hands were shaking in my lap, the $500 crumpled between my fingers like evidence of a crime. You can throw that away, Adonis said, nodding toward the money. You won't need it. It's $500, I said automatically. That's 2 weeks of groceries. Princessa, you're never going to worry about groceries again. He pulled out his phone, the screen illuminating his face in the darkness of the car. What's your student loan account number? I blinked at him. What? Your student debt. Who holds it? He was already scrolling through his contacts, his thumb moving with practiced ease. I don't, why would you? Because you're mine now, and what's mine doesn't beg for scraps. He glanced at me, those dark eyes catching the passing streetlights. The account number, Ella, or I can have my people find it in the next 10 minutes. But I'd rather you just tell me. My brain couldn't process what was happening. Federal student loans, through the Department of Education. But you can't just, watch me. He pressed a contact, bringing the phone to his ear. It rang twice before someone answered. Marcus, I need you to handle something. He paused, listening. No, now. I'm sending you information on a student loan account. Federal. I want it cleared by morning. Wait. I grabbed his arm without thinking, my fingers wrapping around the expensive fabric of his suit. You can't do that. That's over $60,000. He didn't even flinch at the number. $63,412, he said calmly, his eyes never leaving mine, including the accumulated interest. I already know. The casual way he said it, like $63,000 was nothing, like he'd already looked into my financial history before I'd even walked up to him, made my head spin. How do you know that? I whispered. I told you. I know everything about that party. His free hand came up to cover mine where it gripped his arm. I knew who you were the moment you walked in wearing a dress that didn't fit quite right and shoes that were half a size too big. I knew you didn't belong there, and I knew exactly why you came. There was something underneath his words, something almost like recognition, like he saw himself in me, in that desperation to be more than circumstance allowed. Into the phone, he continued. Pull her file. Ella Smith, 23, art student, clear everything. Federal loans, credit card debt, medical bills, I want her completely clean by sunrise. He paused. I don't care how you do it, Marcus. Just do it. Stop, I said, but my voice had no force behind it. You can't just pay off my debts. I don't. I can't accept that. You don't have a choice. He ended the call and slid the phone back into his pocket. It's already done. By tomorrow morning, you'll have a credit score of 800 and zero debt to your name. Why? The question came out broken. Why would you do that? Because I can. His hand was still covering mine, his thumb tracing patterns on my knuckles. Because every second you spend worrying about rent or tuition or whether you can afford to eat is a second you're not focused on me. And Princessa, I want all of your attention. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. It did terrify me, but underneath the fear was something else, something shameful and desperate. Relief. I don't understand any of this, I said, my voice small. I kissed you on a dare an hour ago, and now you're paying off my student loans and telling me I belong to you. This isn't how the world works. It's not how your world worked." He shifted in his seat, angling his body toward mine. "But you're in my world now. And in my world, I take what I want and I keep what's mine. I saw you tonight, standing at that bar in a dress that didn't belong to you, surrounded by people who treated you like garbage, and I knew." "Knew what?" "That you were hungry." His eyes held mine, dark and endless. "Not for food or money or any of the shallow things those girls wanted. You were hungry for something real, something that mattered, someone who would see you for what you actually are, instead of what you're pretending to be." My breath caught. He was right. God, he was absolutely right, and I hated that he could see through me so easily. "I'm not pretending to be anything," I lied. "Yes, you are." His hand moved from mine to my face, cupping my jaw with a gentleness that contradicted everything I knew about him. "You pretend to be small so they'll accept you. You pretend their cruelty doesn't hurt. You pretend you don't want more than the life you've been given." His thumb brushed across my cheek. "But I see through all of it, Princessa. I see the fire you're trying to hide." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, hot and unwanted. "You don't know me. I know enough." He leaned closer, his lips almost brushing mine. "I know you worked 2 shifts today before that party. I know you skipped lunch to afford dry cleaning for that dress. I know you've been living on instant noodles for 3 weeks because you had to choose between groceries and textbooks." "Stop." A tear escaped, rolling down my cheek. "I know you're brilliant and beautiful and capable of so much more than serving coffee to people who don't see you." He caught the tear with his thumb, wiping it away. "I know you deserve better. And I know I'm going to give it to you. Even if I don't want it?" The question was weak, because we both knew the answer. "Especially if you don't want it." His smile was dark, knowing. "Because you've spent your whole life being told what you deserve, and all of it has been a lie. Let me show you the truth." The SUV turned down a street lined with buildings I couldn't afford to look at, let alone enter. Through the window, I caught glimpses of doormen and marble lobbies and lives that existed in a dimension far removed from mine. "Where are we going?" I asked. "My club." He settled back in his seat but kept his hand on my thigh, possessive and warm through the silk. "There are people I want you to meet. People who need to understand that you're under my protection now." "And then what?" "Then we go home." He said it like it was the most natural thing in the world, like I'd already agreed to abandon my apartment, my life, everything I knew. "I have class tomorrow," I said weakly. "I have work." "No, you don't." His voice was firm, final. "You have me. That's all you need." I looked down at the crumpled $500 still in my other hand, the money that had started all of this, money I'd been willing to humiliate myself for. Money that now seemed laughably insignificant compared to the debt he'd just erased with a phone call. "I don't know how to do this," I admitted quietly. "I don't know how to be what you want." "You already are." His hand squeezed my thigh gently. "You just don't know it yet." The SUV pulled up to a building with no sign, just a red door and a line of people wrapped around the block. The crowd parted instantly when they saw the vehicle, recognition and fear rippling through them like a wave. "Welcome to the rest of your life, Ella," Adonis said as his door opened. "Try to keep up." He wiped her debt in seconds. "The system is rigged against normal people like Ella. If you're tired of a broken system where the rich get richer and the poor struggle, comment, break the cycle below. If you love the unfair system, don't comment." The club interior was all black, marble, and gold accents. With lighting so strategically dim, it felt like stepping into beautiful darkness. Music pulsed through the space, not the club bangers I expected, but something slower, more sensual, with a bass line that vibrated through my chest. Adonis's hand remained on my lower back as he guided me through the crowd. People moved out of our way without him having to ask, their eyes sliding away from his face like looking at him directly might turn them to stone. Some of them stared at me, though, their gazes ranging from curious to hungry to pitying. I felt naked despite the dress, exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the amount of skin showing. "This is yours?" I asked, taking in the opulent space. "One of several." He steered me toward a private section roped off by velvet cords and guarded by 2 men built like tanks. They nodded respectfully as we passed. "I own 5 clubs in the city. This one is my favorite." We climbed a short staircase to a VIP area that overlooked the main floor. The elevated position felt strategic, like a throne room where he could survey his kingdom. Leather couches formed a semicircle around a glass table, and the lighting was somehow even more intimate up here. A server appeared instantly with a bottle of champagne I knew I couldn't pronounce, and definitely couldn't afford. Adonis waved her off and ordered whiskey instead, then glanced at me. "What do you drink?" he asked. "Whatever's fine." "That's not an answer." His eyes held mine. "What do you actually like, Ella? Not what's cheapest or most practical." "What do you want?" The question felt heavier than it should. "I like vodka cranberry," I admitted, "but I usually just drink whatever's on special." "Not anymore." He turned to the server. "Belvedere and cranberry, top shelf." The woman nodded and disappeared. Adonis settled onto the couch, pulling me down beside him. His arm draped across the back of the seat, not quite touching me but close enough that I felt surrounded by him. "People are going to come talk to me tonight," he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear over the music. "Business associates, allies, people who owe me favors. You don't have to say anything. Just stay close. What if someone asks who I am?" "Riesa." "They won't." His lips curved slightly. "They're too smart for that. They'll wait until I tell them, which I will, when I'm ready." The drinks arrived. Adonis's whiskey was amber gold in a crystal tumbler. My vodka cranberry looked almost neon in comparison, the red catching the low lights. He lifted his glass toward me. "To new beginnings," he said. I didn't know what else to do, so I clinked my glass against his and took a long drink. The vodka was smooth, nothing like the bottom shelf stuff I was used to that burned going down. The cranberry was fresh, not from a gun or a bottle. Even the glass felt expensive in my hand. "Better than the break room at the coffee shop?" Adonis asked, and there was something almost playful in his tone. "Everything about tonight is better than the coffee shop," I admitted before I could stop myself. "Good." His hand dropped from the back of the couch to my shoulder, his fingers tracing idle patterns on my bare skin. "Get used to it." For the next 20 minutes, people did exactly what Adonis said they would. They approached our table with various levels of deference, spoke to him in low tones about things I didn't understand, shipments and territories and payments, and avoided looking at me directly. I was decoration, a pretty thing at the cartel king's side, and part of me hated how easily I slipped into the role. But another part of me, the part that was 3 drinks in and still processing, having $60,000 of debt erased, felt intoxicated by the power of it. These were dangerous people who probably killed and stole and did unspeakable things, and they were all afraid of the man whose hand was currently drawing lazy circles on my shoulder. I was halfway through my second vodka cranberry when everything changed. A man approached our table who didn't move with the same deference as the others. He was tall, dressed in white instead of the sea of black suits around us, with slicked back hair and a gold chain thick enough to be a weapon. 2 men flanked him, their hands suspiciously close to their waistbands. I felt Adonis tense beside me, his fingers stilling on my shoulder. "Chavaria," the man said, his voice carrying an accent I couldn't place. "I heard you were entertaining tonight. I thought I'd come pay my respects." "El Santo." Adonis's voice was flat, devoid of the warmth he'd used with everyone else. "This is a private section." "So I see." El Santo's eyes slid to me, and something in his gaze made my skin crawl. "And who is this little piece you're keeping warm? Didn't know you were shopping in the clearance section now." The insult hit me like a slap. My cheeks burned, and I started to pull away, to make myself smaller, to disappear the way I always did when people like Jessica mocked me. But Adonis's hand tightened on my shoulder, holding me in place. "Careful," Adonis said, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet I was beginning to recognize. "That's your first warning. You won't get a second." El Santo laughed, but it sounded forced. "What? You're telling me she's special? Come on, Adonis. Look at her. Probably found her working at some diner. Thought she'd be an easy..." He didn't finish the sentence. Adonis moved faster than I'd ever seen anyone move. 1 second he was sitting beside me. The next he had El Santo by the throat, slamming him backwards onto the glass table. The sound of shattering glass cut through the music, and the entire VIP section went silent. I said, "Careful," Adonis growled, his tattooed hand wrapped around El Santo's windpipe. "You disrespect her again, I'll cut out your tongue and mail it to your mother." El Santo's men reached for their weapons, but Adonis's guards were faster. In seconds, guns were drawn all around us. A dozen black barrels pointed at El Santo's crew. "You want to start a war over some girl?" El Santo choked out, his face turning red. "This isn't some girl." Adonis leaned closer, his voice deadly. "This is mine. My woman. My future. And if you ever look at her wrong, speak to her wrong, or even think about her wrong, I will burn your entire operation to the ground and scatter the ashes in the river. Do you understand me?" The music had stopped. Everyone on the floor below was watching now, the entire club frozen, in anticipation of violence. El Santo's eyes were watering, his hands clawing uselessly at Adonis's grip. "I understand," he gasped. "Say you're sorry." Adonis's hand tightened. "Apologize to her." "I'm sorry." El Santo's eyes found mine, and they were full of genuine fear. "I apologize, ma'am." Adonis held him there for another 3 seconds that felt like an eternity, then released him with a shove that sent El Santo stumbling backward into his men's arms. "Get out of my club," Adonis said. "If I see you here again, I won't be so forgiving." El Santo and his crew retreated, practically running for the exit. The moment they were gone, the music resumed. Conversations picked back up. Within seconds, it was as if nothing had happened. Though I noticed people were giving our table even more space than before. Adonis sat back down beside me, adjusting his suit jacket like he hadn't just nearly murdered someone. His knuckles were bleeding slightly from the broken glass, small cuts that welled with red. "You're hurt," I said, my voice shaking. "It's nothing." He picked up his whiskey with his injured hand, taking a slow sip. "Are you all right? Was I all right?" I'd just watched him defend me with the kind of violence that should have sent me running. I'd just seen him threaten to start a war over an insult directed at me. I should be horrified. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Something hot and primal and completely inappropriate. "No one's ever done that before," I whispered. "Done what?" Defended me. I looked at his bleeding hand, then back at his face. "Everyone's always just let people say whatever they want about me. Not anymore." He set down his glass and cupped my face with both hands, not caring about the blood. "You're under my protection now, Ella. That means anyone who hurts you answers to me. And Princesa, I am not a forgiving man. The possessiveness should have scared me. The violence should have sent me running back to my tiny apartment and my safe, boring life. But instead, I leaned into his touch, into the warmth of his bloodied hands, and I knew with horrible certainty that I was already lost. El Santo is a bully who preys on the weak. If you can't stand bullies and think they deserve to be put in their place, hit subscribe. If you side with the bully, just keep walking. We left the club 20 minutes later. After Adonis had finished his whiskey and made it clear to everyone watching that he was unbothered by what had happened, that he would always be unbothered, because men like El Santo were beneath him. But I was bothered. My hands shook as I finished my drink. My heart hammered against my ribs. The image of Adonis's hand around El Santo's throat kept replaying in my mind the casual brutality of it. The way he'd moved like violence was a language he spoke fluently. He'd done that for me. Because someone insulted me, the thought made something dark and hungry coil in my stomach. His hand found mine as we descended the stairs, his fingers interlacing with my trembling ones. "Easy, Princesa," he murmured, low enough that only I could hear. "You're safe." But I wasn't shaking from fear anymore. Not entirely. The SUV was waiting exactly where we'd left it, the same driver, the same silent guard in the passenger seat. Adonis opened my door himself this time, his bloodied hand leaving a small smear on the handle. He didn't seem to notice or care. I slid into the leather interior, and he followed, closing us into the intimate darkness once more. The door shut with that same final sound, sealing us away from the world outside. "Where to, sir?" the driver asked. "Home," Adonis replied. Just that one word, but it sent electricity racing down my spine. The car pulled away from the curb, leaving the pulsing lights of the club behind. The streets outside grew quieter, more upscale with each passing block. Buildings got taller, newer, more expensive. We were heading into the part of the city I'd only ever seen from bus windows. Adonis's hand settled on my thigh again, but this time the touch felt different. Heavier, more deliberate. His thumb traced small circles through the silk of my dress, and I felt each rotation like a brand. "You're still shaking," he observed. "I know." My voice came out breathier than I intended. "Are you scared of me?" His thumb stilled, and I felt his eyes on my face even though I was staring straight ahead. The honest answer was yes. Of course I was scared. I'd just watched him nearly kill a man without hesitation, had seen the way blood looked on his knuckles, had heard him threaten war over an insult directed at me, but that wasn't the whole truth. "I don't know what I am," I admitted quietly. His hand moved from my thigh to my chin, turning my face toward his. In the darkness of the car, with only the passing streetlights to illuminate his features, he looked like something out of a dream, or a nightmare. The line between the two was getting harder to distinguish. "Tell me," he commanded softly. "I should be terrified," I whispered. I should be begging you to let me go. But I stopped, unable to finish the sentence, unable to admit the shameful truth out loud. But you liked it. His voice was knowing, dark with satisfaction. You liked watching me defend you. My breath caught. That's sick. Maybe. His thumb brushed across my bottom lip, the same gesture he'd made earlier, except now there was blood on his skin, and the metallic scent of it filled the space between us. Or maybe you've just spent your whole life waiting for someone to fight for you. The accuracy of it struck me silent. No one's ever protected you, he continued, his voice low and hypnotic. Not your parents, not your friends, not anyone you've ever dated. You've had to be your own defender, your own champion, fighting every battle alone. His hand moved to cup my face, his palm warm against my cheek. Until tonight. You barely know me. I protested weakly, but even I could hear how unconvincing I sounded. I know enough. He leaned closer, and I could smell whiskey on his breath, could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. I know you're tired of fighting alone. I know you want someone strong enough to stand between you and the world. I know you want to feel safe, even if the thing keeping you safe is dangerous. You're insane. But I didn't pull away. Probably. His lips curved into that dark smile. But so are you, for getting in this car, for staying after what you saw, for looking at me right now like you want me to kiss you again. I started to deny it, but he pressed his thumb against my lips, silencing me. Don't lie to me, Ella. I can see it. Your pupils are dilated. Your pulse is racing right here. His hand moved to my throat, fingers settling over my hammering heartbeat. You're not shaking from fear anymore. You're shaking because you want something you think you shouldn't want. God help me. He was right. What happens now? I asked, my voice barely audible. Now I take you home. His hand slid from my throat to the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my hair. My home. And I show you what it means to be mine. The promise in his words made heat pool low in my stomach. I haven't agreed to anything. Yes, you have. He tugged gently on my hair, tilting my head back. You agreed the moment you kissed me. You agreed when you got in this car. You agreed when you looked at me with those wide eyes after I put my hands on El Santo and didn't run. His lips hovered just above mine. Your words might be saying no, but everything else about you is screaming yes. I should have denied it. Should have demanded he take me back to my apartment. Should have insisted on maintaining some semblance of control over my life. Instead, I heard myself whisper, yes. The word hung between us for a heartbeat before Adonis closed the distance, capturing my mouth with his. This kiss was different from the one at the party. That had been claiming. Possessive. This was consuming. His hand tightened in my hair as his tongue swept into my mouth, tasting me, conquering me. I made a sound I didn't recognize, desperate and needy, and his other hand gripped my waist, pulling me closer. The console between us became an obstacle, a frustrating barrier keeping our bodies apart. He broke the kiss with a curse, his breathing heavy. We're 5 minutes away, he said, his voice rough. And this car has cameras. The implications of that made me flush. Oh, he repeated, his tone mocking but fond. He released me, though his hand returned immediately to my thigh, higher this time, possessive. 5 minutes, Princessa. Then I'm taking you upstairs and showing you exactly what happens when you become mine. The promise or threat made my thighs clench together involuntarily. His hand flexed against my leg, and I knew he felt it, knew he understood exactly what his words were doing to me. I started, then stopped, embarrassed. Never what? His voice was gentle now, concerned. Been with someone like you. Someone so, I gestured vaguely at him, at the expensive suit and the tattoos and the violence he wore like a second skin. Someone so dangerous? He supplied. Someone so certain. I looked at him, really looked at him. You know exactly what you want, and you just take it. I've never been around that before. Get used to it. The SUV turned down a tree-lined street with buildings that looked like they belonged in architectural magazines. Because Ella, I am very certain about you, and I always get what I want. The car pulled up to a building that made my breath catch all glass and steel and modern elegance, with a doorman in a pristine uniform and lighting that made everything look touched by gold. This is where you live? I asked stupidly. This is where we live now, he corrected. Penthouse, top floor. The driver opened my door, and Adonis exited first, extending his hand to help me out. My legs felt weak as I stepped onto the sidewalk, the borrowed heels clicking against concrete that probably cost more per square foot than my monthly rent. The doorman nodded respectfully. "Good evening, Mr. Chavaria." "Evening, Marcus." Adonis kept his hand on my lower back, guiding me toward the entrance. We stepped into a lobby that looked like it belonged in a 5-star hotel. Marble floors, abstract art on the walls, a chandelier that probably cost more than my college education. An elevator with gold doors opened automatically as we approached. Inside, Adonis pressed the button for the penthouse. The doors closed, sealing us into a mirrored space where I could see our reflection from every angle, the girl in the yellow dress who'd walked into a party looking for $500, and the king of the underworld who'd decided she belonged to him. As the elevator began its ascent, Adonis turned me to face him, pressing me back against the mirrored wall. "Last chance," he said, his voice low. "Tell me to stop, and I'll have Marcus take you back to your apartment. No debt, no obligations. You walk away free." I looked up at him, at this beautiful, terrifying man who'd upended my entire world in a single night. "I don't want to be free," I whispered. His smile was triumphant and dark, and absolutely devastating. "Good," he murmured, his lips finding my throat. "Because I never planned to let you go anyway." The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse. No hallway, no other apartments, just his space, sprawling and private and untouchable. I stepped out onto hardwood floors so polished they looked like black glass. Floor-to-ceiling windows dominated 3 walls, offering a view of the city that made my breath catch thousands of lights glittering like fallen stars, the skyline stretching endlessly in every direction. This was what the world looked like from the top. The space was masculine and minimal, dark furniture, clean lines, abstract art that probably cost more than most people made in a year. But it wasn't cold. There was warmth in the amber lighting, in the leather and wood, in the careful curation of every piece. I couldn't find words big enough. "Home," Adonis finished, shrugging out of his suit jacket and draping it over a nearby chair. He rolled up his sleeves, revealing more of the tattoos that covered his forearms, intricate patterns of roses and thorns and symbols I didn't recognize. The small cuts on his knuckles had stopped bleeding, leaving dark smears across his skin. I stood frozen near the elevator, suddenly aware of how out of place I looked in this borrowed yellow dress, in this world of steel and glass and money. "Let me clean those," I said, gesturing to his hands. Anything to have something to do, some purpose beyond standing here drowning in the reality of what I'd agreed to. "Kitchen's that way." He nodded toward an archway. "First aid kit under the sink." I found the kitchen all marble countertops and professional-grade appliances that had probably never seen actual cooking. The first aid kit was exactly where he said it would be, pristine and organized like everything else in this place. When I returned to the main room, Adonis was standing by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights. He'd removed his cufflinks, and his white shirt was open at the collar, revealing more of the serpent tattooed on his throat. He looked like a king surveying his kingdom. "Sit," I said softly, gesturing to the couch. He turned, something like amusement flickering across his features, but he obeyed. I knelt in front of him, the yellow silk of my dress pooling around me, and reached for his injured hand. Up close, the cuts weren't as bad as I'd feared, shallow slices from the glass, already beginning to clot. I cleaned them with antiseptic wipes, trying to ignore how aware I was of his eyes on me, watching my every movement. "You're gentle," he observed. "You're bleeding because of me." I kept my focus on his hand, on the careful work of bandaging his knuckles. "The least I can do is patch you up. I'm bleeding because El Santo doesn't know when to shut his mouth." His other hand came up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. "Don't take responsibility for other people's stupidity, Princessa. You'll drive yourself crazy." I finished with the first hand and reached for the second. "Is it always like this? The violence?" "Sometimes." He didn't sugarcoat it. "The world I live in doesn't have room for weakness. You show mercy. People see it as an invitation to take what's yours. You let insults slide, and suddenly everyone thinks they can disrespect you." His fingers found my chin, tilting my face up to meet his eyes. "But the violence isn't random. It's calculated, strategic. I don't hurt people because I enjoy it. I hurt people because it's necessary to protect what's mine. And I'm yours now." It wasn't a question. Yes. No hesitation, no apology. "You are." I should have felt trapped. Should have felt like property, like something bought and owned. But instead, I felt something else entirely, something that felt dangerously close to belonging. I finished bandaging his second hand and sat back on my heels. "Why me?" The question came out small, vulnerable. "You could have anyone. Why choose the broke art student in the borrowed dress? Adonis leaned forward, elbows on his knees, bringing us face to face. Because everyone else in that room was for sale. They were there to make connections, to climb social ladders, to leverage their looks or their family names into something profitable. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. But you were there because you were desperate and brave and too stubborn to stay in your lane. You walked up to the most dangerous man in the room and kissed him for $500 because you needed it. His eyes held mine. That kind of courage? That kind of fire? You can't buy that, Princessa. You can't fake it. You either have it or you don't. I'm not brave, I whispered. I'm terrified. Brave people are always terrified. They just do it anyway. He stood, pulling me up with him, and suddenly we were standing in the middle of his fortress, in the middle of his world, and I could feel the weight of the choice pressing down on me. I'm going to ask you one more time, Adonis said, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet. And I need you to understand what you're choosing. He walked to the elevator, pressing the button. The doors opened immediately, the golden light spilling into the dark penthouse like an invitation, or an escape route. You can walk through those doors right now, he continued, turning back to face me. I'll have Marcus take you home. Your debt is still cleared, I won't take that back. Your friends won't bother you again. You can go back to your classes, your coffee shop job, your tiny apartment. You can live your life exactly as you planned. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it, the real choice. The one that mattered. But if you stay, his voice dropped even lower. If you stay, Ella, everything changes. You become mine in every sense of the word. You live here. You let me take care of you. You accept my protection, my possessiveness, my world. He took a step toward me, and make no mistake, it's a dark world. There will be violence. There will be danger. There will be people who want to hurt you just to hurt me. Another step closer. You'll be the woman at my side, which makes you a target and a queen in equal measure. You'll have everything you could ever want, but the price is that you can never leave. Once you're mine forever. I don't do temporary, Princessa. I don't share. I don't let go. He was right in front of me now, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his body. So choose. His hand cupped my face, his bandaged knuckles rough against my skin. Safety and struggle, or danger and devotion. Poverty with freedom, or luxury with me. Your old life where no one sees you, or a new life where I worship you. The elevator doors remained open, waiting. The city lights glittered beyond the windows, and Adonis stood before me, this beautiful monster offering me everything I'd ever wanted at a price I wasn't sure I could afford. If I stay, I heard myself say, what happens to who I was? She becomes who you are. His thumb traced my bottom lip. You don't disappear, Ella. You evolve. The girl who works 2 jobs becomes the woman who runs an empire at my side. The art student becomes the artist with unlimited resources. The invisible girl becomes the most visible woman in the city. I don't know how to be that person. You learn. His lips brushed against my forehead, gentle despite everything. I teach you. We figure it out together. I looked at the elevator one last time. Saw my reflection in its gold-mirrored walls, small, scared, wearing a dress that didn't belong to me. Then I looked at Adonis, at this man who'd seen something in me worth claiming, worth protecting, worth fighting for. I'm not strong enough for your world, I whispered. Yes, you are. His certainty was absolute. You just don't know it yet. I could get hurt. Not while I'm breathing. The promise was dark and fierce. Anyone who touches you dies screaming. Anyone who threatens you disappears. Anyone who even looks at you wrong learns why people fear my name. The possessiveness should have been suffocating. Instead, it felt like oxygen. I stepped away from him, and I watched something flash in his eyes, not quite fear, but close. The possibility that I might choose the elevator, might choose to walk away. But I didn't walk toward the elevator. I walked to the windows, to the view of the city spread out below us like a glittering promise. I pressed my palm against the glass, feeling the cool surface against my skin, and I thought about my apartment with its broken heater and its thin walls. I thought about Jessica and her cruel games. I thought about working doubles to barely make rent, about eating instant noodles in the dark to save on electricity. And then I thought about the way Adonis had looked at me when I kissed him, the way he'd defended me without hesitation, the way he'd erased my debt with a phone call and promised me a life where I'd never have to beg for anything again. Close the elevator, I said quietly. Behind me, I heard the doors slide shut. The golden light disappeared, leaving only the city glow and the amber warmth of Adonis's world. When I turned to face him, his expression was triumphant and possessive, and achingly gentle all at once. "Say it," he commanded softly. "I need to hear you say it." I took a breath, feeling the weight of the words before I spoke them. "I choose you. I choose this. I choose to stay." His smile was devastating. "And you'll never regret it, Princessa. I promise you that. Ella has a choice: struggle alone or rule with a monster. If you think loyalty is the most important thing in a relationship, hit that like button. Snakes and traitors won't press it." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with finality. "I choose you." 3 words that changed everything. Adonis crossed the space between us in 3 strides, his hands cupping my face as he kissed me with an intensity that stole my breath. This wasn't the claiming kiss from the party or the desperate kiss in the elevator. This was different, deeper, more certain, like he was pouring something into me through the contact of our lips. "Mine," he murmured against my mouth. "Say it." "Yours," I breathed back, and the word felt like falling and flying at the same time. His hands slid from my face to my shoulders, then lower, finding the zipper at the back of the yellow dress. He paused, his fingers hovering over the metal pull. "Last chance to change your mind," he said, but there was no real question in his voice. He knew my answer. "I'm not changing my mind." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "I'm done being afraid." The zipper whispered down my spine, the sound impossibly loud in the quiet of the penthouse. Cool air hit my bare skin as the dress loosened, and I felt Adonis's intake of breath when he realized I wasn't wearing much underneath it, just a simple nude bra and underwear. Nothing fancy, nothing that matched the borrowed elegance of the dress. "Ella," he said, my name rough with want. The dress slipped from my shoulders, pooling at my feet in a circle of yellow silk. I stood before him in my mismatched undergarments and borrowed heels, feeling more exposed than I'd ever felt in my life. But when I looked at his face, I didn't see judgment or disappointment. I saw hunger, raw, undisguised hunger that made heat bloom across my skin. "You're perfect," he said, and somehow in that moment, I believed him. His hands found my waist, pulling me against him. The expensive fabric of his shirt was soft against my bare skin, and I could feel the heat of his body through it, the solid muscle beneath. "Your turn," I whispered, surprised by my own boldness. A smile curved his lips, not the predatory one from before, but something softer, almost fond. "Fair is fair, Princessa." I reached for the buttons of his shirt with trembling fingers. One button, then another, revealing more of the ink that covered his chest. The serpent from his throat continued down, coiling across his collarbone. Roses bloomed across his pectoral muscles, their stems wrapped in thorns so detailed I could see individual points, and there, over his heart, was a name in elegant script, his mother's. I would learn later, the only person he'd ever loved before me. But it wasn't just the tattoos that made me pause. It was the scars. Silver lines crisscrossed his torso, some thin and precise like knife wounds, others puckered and irregular like bullets. His body was a map of violence, each mark a story of survival, not what you expected. His voice was carefully neutral, but I heard the tension underneath it. I traced my fingers over a particularly long scar that ran from his ribcage to his hip. "How many times have people tried to kill you?" "Stopped counting after 12. He caught my hand, pressing it flat against his chest where I could feel his heart beating steady and strong. "But I'm still here." "They're not." "Does it hurt?" I asked, following another scar with my fingertips. "Not anymore. Most of these are years old." He watched me explore his damaged skin with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Does it bother you? The violence I carry?" I thought about lying, about telling him what I thought he wanted to hear, but he demanded honesty, and something about the way he stood before me bare and scarred and vulnerable despite all his power made me want to give it to him. "It should," I admitted, "but it doesn't. It just makes me wonder." I paused, tracing the outline of a tattoo that covered what looked like a burn scar. "It makes me wonder what you've survived to become this." "Everything," he said simply. "I've survived everything." I pushed the shirt off his shoulders, letting it fall to the floor beside my dress. His body was all lean muscle and ink and scars, a beautiful contradiction of strength and damage. "My turn," he said, his voice dropping lower. His hands moved to my back, unhooking my bra with practiced ease. It joined the growing pile of discarded clothing, and suddenly there was nothing between us but his remaining clothes and the thin fabric of my underwear. He picked me up like I weighed nothing. my legs automatically wrapping around his waist as he carried me through an archway into what had to be his bedroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows here too, but with sheer curtains that softened the city lights into a warm glow. The bed was massive, covered in dark sheets that looked criminally soft. He laid me down gently, a contrast to the violence I knew he was capable of, and stood at the edge of the bed, looking at me like I was something precious, something worth protecting. "You're thinking too much," I said, reaching for him. "I can see it. I'm thinking about how I could have lost you tonight." He removed his belt, the leather sliding through loops with a sound that made my stomach tighten. "If you'd chosen that elevator, if you'd walked away, but I didn't." "But you could have." He unbuttoned his pants, stepping out of them with the same casual grace he brought to everything. "And that's terrifying, Ella. Because I don't get terrified. I don't get scared. But the thought of you leaving—" "I'm not leaving," I interrupted, sitting up on my knees. "I'm here. I'm staying. I chose you, Adonis. Stop waiting for me to change my mind." Something in my words broke through his control. He was on me in seconds, pressing me back into the mattress, his mouth finding mine with desperate intensity. His hands were everywhere, my hair, my face, my throat, my waist, like he was trying to memorize the feel of me, to convince himself I was real. I arched into his touch, my own hands exploring the planes of his back, feeling the muscle shift beneath scarred skin. Every mark, every imperfection, every piece of evidence that he'd survived things that should have killed him. I wanted to know all of it, trace all of it, claim all of it as mine the way he'd claimed me. "Tell me what you want," he murmured against my throat, his lips tracing the line of my pulse. "You," I gasped, as his teeth grazed my collarbone. "I want you. All of you. Everything you're willing to give me. That's dangerous, Princessa." His hand slid lower, skimming over my hip. "Because I'll give you everything. My protection, my devotion, my darkness. All of it. Then give it to me." I pulled his face up to mine, meeting his eyes. "Stop holding back." The last thread of his control snapped. His kiss turned consuming, possessive, as he eliminated the last barriers between us. Skin against skin, heat against heat, two damaged people finding something whole in each other. The intimacy was raw in a way I'd never experienced, no pretense, no performance, just desperate need and unexpected tenderness. He touched me like I was sacred and sinful all at once, murmuring words in Spanish I didn't understand but felt in my bones. "Eres mía," he breathed against my skin. "Forever, Ella. You're mine forever." "Forever," I agreed, past the point of caring that I was promising my life to a man I'd met hours ago. Time didn't matter. Logic didn't matter. All that mattered was the way he made me feel seen, wanted, protected, worshipped. The violence of his world melted away in the sanctuary of his bedroom, replaced by something gentler, but no less intense. He mapped every inch of my body like he was committing it to memory, finding places that made me gasp, learning what made me arch into his touch. And when he finally made me completely his, when there was no boundary left between us, I understood why people wrote songs and poems and stories about this feeling. It wasn't just physical, it was the erasure of loneliness, the end of invisibility, the feeling of being chosen by someone who could have anyone. Afterwards, we lay tangled together in sheets that smelled like cedar and safety, the city lights casting patterns across our intertwined bodies. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my spine while I mapped the tattoos on his chest, following the lines of ink and scars. "What does this one mean?" I asked, touching a symbol near his ribs. "Family crest, the Chavaria legacy." His hand covered mine. "Which is your legacy now too." The weight of that statement should have scared me. Instead, it felt like an anchor. "I'm going to learn everything about you," I promised. "Every scar, every tattoo, every piece of your history. That's going to take a while, Princessa." His lips found my forehead. "I've lived a lot of life. Good thing we have forever then." His arms tightened around me, possessive even in rest. "Forever," he agreed. "And I'm going to spend every second of it making sure you never regret choosing me." I traced the scar over his heart, feeling the steady beat beneath my palm. "I won't," I whispered. "I already don't." Adonis bears his scars openly. If you respect people who are real about their past and don't hide behind a mask, comment, "Real recognizes real." Fake people, this isn't for you. I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the unfamiliar weight of Egyptian cotton sheets against my bare skin. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. The bed was too soft, the room too large, the light too bright and clean. Then memory crashed over me like a wave. The party, the kiss, the claiming, the choice. Adonis. I turned my head to find the other side of the bed empty but still warm, the indent of his body visible in the sheets. The scent of cedar and coffee drifted from somewhere deeper in the penthouse, domestic and surreal. I sat up slowly, the sheet pooling at my waist, and took in the bedroom in daylight. It was even more stunning than I'd realized last night, all dark wood and masculine elegance, with abstract art on the walls that probably cost more than my yearly tuition. Through the windows, the city stretched endlessly, looking different in morning light, softer, more forgiving. My phone buzzed from somewhere on the floor, insistent and angry. I found it tangled in the yellow dress. The screen lit up with notification after notification. 43 missed calls, 67 text messages, all from numbers I recognized: Jessica, Madison, Brittany, and the rest of the girls who'd called themselves my friends. My stomach tightened as I scrolled through the messages, watching the tone shift from confusion to panic to outright fear. Jessica, where did you go with him? Jessica. Ella, answer your phone. Jessica. Do you know who that is? Do you know what he does? Madison. Oh my God, Ella, are you okay? Madison, please tell us you're safe. Brittany. We're so sorry about the dare. We didn't know he'd actually... Jessica. My dad just called. He said Adonis Chavarria owns half the city. He said people who cross him disappear. Ella, please answer. Madison. We're worried about you. Jessica. Okay, we know you're alive because my dad heard you're staying with him. Jessica. We won't tell anyone. We swear. Jessica. Please don't be mad at us. Brittany. We'll stay away, we promise. Just please don't let him hurt us. I stared at the screen, reading the messages again. The girls who'd made me feel small for 2 years, who'd treated me like entertainment, who dared me to kiss a stranger for their amusement. They were terrified. Not of what might happen to me, but of what I might do to them, what Adonis might do to them on my behalf. The power shift was dizzying. Yesterday I'd been invisible, desperate, the charity case they kept around to feel better about themselves. Today I was the woman they feared, the woman attached to the most dangerous man in the city. I should have felt guilty, should have reassured them, told them they were safe, that I wasn't vindictive. Instead, I held down the delete button and watched every message disappear. Then I blocked their numbers, one by one, until my phone went silent. The girl who would have apologized, who would have made herself smaller to make them comfortable, who would have rushed to assure them she wasn't a threat, that girl had stayed behind in that borrowed dress on a ballroom floor. I was someone else now. Someone who didn't owe explanations to people who'd never cared about her. Good morning, Princessa. I looked up to find Adonis leaning against the doorframe, watching me with dark, knowing eyes. He was shirtless, wearing only black pajama pants that hung low on his hips, revealing the trail of tattoos that disappeared beneath the waistband. His hair was slightly mussed, and there was a coffee cup in each hand. He looked domestic and dangerous all at once, and my heart did something complicated in my chest. Morning, I said, suddenly aware that I was naked, except for the sheet clutched to my chest. He crossed the room with that predator's grace, setting both cups on the nightstand before settling onto the bed beside me. Sleep well? Better than I have in months. It was true. Despite everything, despite the insanity of what I'd done, the life I'd left behind, the world I'd stepped into, I'd slept deeply, dreamlessly, safely. Good. He handed me one of the cups, a latte with perfect foam art. The kind I used to make for other people but never bought for myself. Drink. I took a sip. It was perfect, rich and smooth, and exactly the right temperature. I have many skills you don't know about yet. His eyes tracked to my phone, still clutched in my other hand. Trouble? I should have lied. Should have said everything was fine. But he demanded honesty, and I found I wanted to give it to him. My friends, my former friends, spent the night blowing up my phone. 50 messages about how worried they are, how sorry they are about the dare. I set the phone face down on the nightstand. But it wasn't really worry. It was fear. They're terrified you're going to hurt them. Do you want me to? The question was casual, but his eyes were serious. No, I met his gaze. I just want them gone. Out of my life, like they never mattered. And do they matter? I thought about the past 2 years. The comments about my clothes, the way they'd forget to invite me to things, the constant reminders that I was only there on scholarship, that I didn't really belong. The dare that had started all of this. No, I said finally. They never did. Then they're already gone. He took my phone, doing something quickly before setting it back down. I've had your number changed. No one from your old life can reach you unless you want them to. The finality of it should have scared me. Instead, it felt like liberation. Just like that? I asked. Just like that. He cupped my face, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone. You're starting fresh, Ella. New number, new address, new life. The only people who'll have access to you are the ones you choose. And you, I added. And me. He agreed, his smile dark and possessive. Always me. I sipped my latte, letting the warmth spread through me. I should feel bad about this. About cutting them off. About not feeling guilty. But you don't. But I don't. I looked at him over the rim of my cup. Does that make me a bad person? It makes you someone who finally understands her worth. He set his own cup down, his hand finding mine. Those girls used you, Ella. They made you feel grateful for their scraps of attention. They put you in danger for entertainment. You don't owe them guilt, or explanations, or anything else. My mom always said, I started, then stopped. Said what? That I should be grateful for whatever I get. That people like us don't get to be picky. The words tasted bitter. She meant well. She just wanted me to be realistic about my place in the world. And what is your place in the world now? His eyes held mine, dark and intense. I looked around the bedroom at the luxury I'd woken up in, at the man who'd claimed me, at the coffee that cost more than I used to make in an hour. I thought about the debt that no longer existed, the friends I no longer needed, the life I'd left behind. Here, I said quietly. My place is here, with you. The satisfaction in his expression was unmistakable. Say it again. I'm home. The words felt right, settled something deep in my chest that had been restless my entire life. This is home now. He pulled me into his lap, sheet and all, his arms wrapping around me like he could shield me from everything outside these walls. You're never going back to that apartment, never going back to that coffee shop, never going back to people who made you feel less than what you are. What am I? I asked, my lips against his shoulder. Mine. His hand tangled in my hair. My woman, my queen, my future. Your prisoner? I teased, but there was a real question underneath it. My choice, he corrected. Just like I'm yours. You chose me last night, Ella. But I chose you the moment you walked across that ballroom, the moment you were brave enough to kiss a monster for $500. Best $500 I ever made, I said, and was surprised to find I meant it. He laughed a real laugh, warm and genuine, and the sound made something in my chest expand. You never even got to spend it. Didn't need to. I pulled back to look at him. I got something better. A mafia boss with anger issues and a body count. A man who sees me, who fights for me, who cleared my debt and changed my life in one night. I traced the serpent tattoo on his throat. A man who gave me a choice and respected it, even though he didn't have to. Ella. His voice was rough. I know what you are, I interrupted. I know what you do. I know the darkness that comes with your world. And I'm choosing it anyway. I'm choosing you anyway. His kiss was tender and fierce all at once, tasting like coffee and promises and the beginning of something that should have been terrifying but felt like coming home. When we finally broke apart, the city stretched out below us in endless glittering possibility, and my phone stayed silent and forgotten on the nightstand. The old Ella, the one who apologized for existing, who worked herself to exhaustion for people who didn't care, who accepted scraps and called it enough she was gone. In her place was someone new. Someone who woke up in silk sheets and drank expensive coffee and belonged to a man who would burn the world down to keep her safe. Someone who'd kissed a monster on a dare and discovered he was exactly what she'd been searching for all along. What do we do now? I asked, settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Now? His arms tightened around me. Now we live, Princessa. We rule. We build an empire together. Together, I echoed, and knew with absolute certainty that I would never regret the choice I'd made. I was home. Finally, impossibly, completely, I was home.